Hey, have you heard about Betway? It is the sports betting app that backs you to trust your hockey instincts. Maybe you're an NHL expert. Maybe you know something about who's going to win games with the Ottawa Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs, maybe the Canadiens and the Jets as well, the Flames, the Oilers, even the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah, maybe you consider yourself an NHL expert. Then you are going to love this You Lead, You Win offer from Betway. Betway will pay you out as a winner if a team leads 2-0 in any match involving a Canadian team with a $20 max stake. So head on over to Betway and bet your way. Must be 19 years or older to play. Please play responsibly. Because we are, 3 weeks away from the NHL trade deadline? The
3 weeks
trading
to the
pile.
day.
We have to bring back the trading pile. The trading pile is where we'll throw in some names. I'll mention one to CJ. CJ will say if the trade talk around them is legit, if there's no trade talk, if there's a team associated. I mean, we're not going to try to get you radioed here, but we're going to try to get you to drop a nugget or two, if that is possible, CJ, because you know so much.
Well, give it your best shot.
Okay. So this first one I want to mention, at first I was mentioning one name from this particular team. And then I realized there's a second name that could be there. And then there's a third name, maybe even a fourth. So I just said, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to mention all four of these names. I'm just going to mention the team. And you just tell me all the players that could very well move from this team. That team in particular is the Anaheim Ducks with new GM Pat Verbeek. It doesn't look as if he's good. Look, I think he'll have a chill NHL trade deadline. I'm kidding, of course. He might be very busy. But I'd like to know what you think about what's available from the Anaheim Ducks.
Well, it's not entirely clear yet is the easy answer, but you have Hampus Lindholm, Josh Manson, and Rickard Rakell. Notably, those three are all pending unrestricted free agents. And it's Pat Verbeek's view that if they're not signed to extensions by the deadline, that they'll be made available. Now, I guess there's still a world where they might not be traded, but it's pretty clear that he'll at least gauge the market on those players if they're not going to stay. It seems like there's been a particular interest to try to keep Lindholm. If we're ranking them 1, 2, 3, he'd probably be the most desired player they'd be trading. Certainly capable of playing the most minutes. He's 22, 23 minutes a night. Been very good for a long time in Anaheim. And I think all things being equal, the Ducks would like to keep him, but this will probably be a theme. If you bring up a few other players, I'm guessing you're going to bring up that's kind of the delicate dance now. It gets down to 3 weeks left. And it's like, all right, how badly do you want to stay? Do you want to be here? We're talking this contract. Do you want to test the market? Because if you want to test the market, you're probably moving once by March 21st and then potentially moving again in July in free agency. And so, that's where it's at. I think the fact, though, that there's a new front office there makes it, again, a little bit easier to do this. It's sort of like the same dynamic you're seeing in Montreal, where there's a little less maybe loyalty to some of the players. And it's more just you're looking at everyone as an asset in this case. And you're looking, if you're now running that team, how can we maximize our assets? And so I think it's likely, if we're gauging the situation, at least one of those guys will be traded. Probably unlikely that all three of them are traded because there are some attempts ongoing to try to extend them. But, it's not – there's still enough time in those contract talks to really say one way or the other, this guy's definitely on the move or this guy's going to stay. But it's certainly they're for me the team to watch at the deadline, just because that's three pretty notable rental players that could be on the move or at least be staying longer term with the Ducks.
What about some other names that may, I don't know. I actually don't know offhand where the Ducks are in the standings, but what if they want to get crazy and think, hey, Ryan Getzlaf deserves another chance at getting a title with a true contending team? What if John Gibson is fed up and saying, hey, I'm trying to give the best of myself here and I need to be on a legit team, and he gets thrown out there? What about some of those other names that they could be throwing?
Well, look, with Ryan Getzlaf specifically, there was some interest in him at the deadline last year. Vegas and Montreal in particular showed at least a willingness to want to bring him on. At that time, he decided not to move on from Anaheim, ended up signing, another year on his contract. He's spent his whole career there. And so I would think if he wants to move to a contender, kind of like the Claude Giroux status, or, the team will do right by him. Zdeno Chara with the Islanders is a similar situation where, he won't be traded against his will, and B, he won't be traded anywhere he doesn't want to go. But I think there's enough trust built up with him in the organization to see if that happens. Gibson, I think, is less likely at this point in time. The Ducks are right on the fringes of playoff contention. I mean, they've fallen off here of late, but this sport's crazy. Like, they could reel off 4 straight wins in the next week and be right there. And then are we really talking about trading your franchise goaltender or even, someone like Ryan Getzlaf? I think that the focus will more be on the 3 guys we talked about first that are sort of younger and in demand. I do think if Getzlaf wants to move on, they'll find a way to make that happen and get him to a contender for another run at a cup. But, he also won a cup earlier in his career. I think it's important to recall that. And, I think he's very comfortable down there. He's got a family, got a great setup. He's been with the team. He'll probably work for the team if in some capacity in retirement. And so, I wouldn't count on either him or John Gibson being moved at this point.
Joe Pavelski of the Dallas Stars.
It sounds to me like he's going to be extended by the Stars. There's certainly willingness on both sides there to work with each other, and there just seems to be a high level of confidence among both sides in that negotiation that they're going to be able to get something done. He would be talking about an intriguing name if they were ever to make him available. If they're not able to agree on an extension, this guy's drinking from the fountain of youth. Him and Alex Ovechkin, we all got to get one of what they're having or more. Joe Pavelski all of a sudden being a point per game player on the other side of 35, not just 30. With his playoff experience or the way he performed, even I think back to the Stars run in the bubble in Edmonton, he was so important to what they were doing there. Dude can still play, but I really think from a trading pile standpoint, he's going to be on the extension file more than other teams being able to bid on him.
I like that name, extension file. By the way, it is totally fine if you mention a player in the trading pile and you think, it might end up being an extension more than a trade. That is totally fine. What about this name that has actually, I think we've briefly discussed him before. I'm curious if there's going to be more talk around him now, just because he did previously say he wanted out. Is there anything on Jake DeBrusk that we should be looking out for?
I think the Bruins would still like to find him another home, but he's actually become, since that trade request became public, I mean, he's been used higher up their lineup. He's even seen some time on their top line. And I think some of the frustration there, obviously, him and the coach haven't always seen eye to eye, which isn't unusual. It's part of the game. But, I think he found himself sort of in a third line role, thinking he should be a second liner. Well, because of injuries and other situations the Bruins have dealt with, he's been able to play a little higher up the lineup by and large. But I do think big picture, yes, he'll be moved at some point. I'm not so sure it's going to happen by the deadline now. It's not to say it won't happen, but because of the way the season's unfolded and the way things have gone for Jake DeBrusk, I could see him staying on and maybe they find him that new home in the summer. But this is a marriage that's going to end, but it might have a little bit more run to it before that time comes.
Okay. All right. I like the marriage analogy. How about this name, Brandon Hagel, I believe the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, just had a hat trick this week, help pumping the trade value. I saw he was asked about his trade. He said, man, I was a 6th round pick. And he's seeing all these rumors that the Hawks want a 1st rounder plus. Look, they've taken calls on him. That's for sure. There's a lot of interest in him, and with good reason. He fits the mold of the kind of acquisition that Blake Coleman was, for example, for Tampa, where he signed at a reasonable number for a couple seasons beyond this one. Not a superstar by name or by reputation, but can certainly play a valuable role on a good team. And I think the thing is, all the good teams, whether it's the Toronto or Tampa, they're not just looking for players to help their run right now. They're looking for cost-controlled guys that can be around for a couple seasons. And, certainly Barclay Goodrow and Coleman were that for 2 years for Tampa. They happened to win the Cups both years. Those players were on their team. And so, yeah, Brandon Hagel has interest, but the price is high. And I think Chicago ultimately doesn't have to move him. He's 23 years old. But, a little bit like the Jacob Chikrin thing with Arizona, where I think it's like, okay, if we can get someone to pay some silly price, we're going to move on from him. But, I do think there's a chance he certainly remains a Blackhawk on the other side of the deadline. It's kind of like you can come and buy my house if you really want to. If you want to pay twice its value, then I'm probably selling. But otherwise, I'm fine living where I am.
Did you just put your house on the market? What was that last part?
I'm speaking. I'm
Just
speaking in
kidding.
hypotheticals.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
Not
kidding.
anything specific to my house. No.
I'm just kidding.